morning, Katrina.
Good morning, Mark.
Welcome to this Katrina Walker from CodeUp in Barcelona, and thanks for making the time to be with us this morning. I know you're extremely busy.
No problem. I'm always happy to help and work with Neo Academy.
We are super interested in what you're doing. Been giving it a lot of thought, and we just published an article this week on introducing our audience to CodeUp, but just for the people who might not have seen it, would you mind just giving us in a nutshell, how would you kind of briefly explain what CodeUp is and what your role is there?
Yeah, absolutely. CodeUp is an international tech school for women, trans, and non-binary people, which we often refer to as Women Plus. We're headquartered in Barcelona, and really what we're doing is two things. We're supporting Women's Plus transition or upskilling in tech through boot camps like full stack engineering, data science, Android development, product management. And the flip side is that we're also supporting companies and governments, NGOs with diversifying their engineering teams, their talent pipelines. So we're basically trying to bridge together technical talent development with diversity inclusion goals. As I mentioned, we're in Barcelona. We also have a campus in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, and we're working on getting to Latin America by the end of this year.
Amazing. Right. So already I've learned a couple of things I didn't know. First of all was the Latin American move, which is super exciting. And I also had no idea that you were actually involved in the other side about helping companies. And you said, is it local government or local authorities as well?
Yeah, exactly. So, for example, we're working with the unemployment agency here in Barcelona. Basically, people who are registered with the unemployment agency and they're looking to get into tech, the government is funding their training in partnership with companies like CodeUp.
Okay, that's amazing. Right, that's such good news. So this is, very, very consistent with what your mission is, isn't it? I mean, it's it's not just about kind of bridging the gap or helping Women Plus transition into tech, but you've also said you want to change the culture.
Yeah.
And that it's one thing I want to talk to you about how you do that. So it's not just about supporting a broader spectrum of people to come in and feel like this is a place where we belong and we should be. But you're not waiting for that to happen. You're actually going directly into organizations just now and saying, what can we do? So how do you do that then with existing organizations? So let's say they've expressed an interest in, they've acknowledged that there's a problem, which there absolutely is, the gap in tech, and then they've asked for your help. So how would you actually start approaching that?
Yeah, so it's true. I mean, CodeUp coding schools have been around since 2010. And we like this as an educational model, but our team and our beliefs are very mission driven. And so we've sort of conflated the two with addressing the gender parity in tech worldwide, as well as using this educational model of an intense learning experience. We think to really tap into addressing the gender disparity, it's going to require help from many different stakeholders, right? And the good news is that, in the past, I can use myself for an example. I was really pissed off that I was not encouraged to pursue tech, despite being a total computer nerd as a child and growing up in the San Francisco Bay Area, where it was like, teeming with opportunity in tech. I was not set on that track, and I attribute that to my gender. And later in life, I got a little pissed off about that because I thought I missed an immense opportunity there, and not just financial opportunity, career opportunity, but intellectual challenge and interest. I was lacking that in my current work. So I went after it in my 30s. And I was working in as a data scientist, and I learned, I was experiencing that there weren't a lot of women out there, and I was missing this. And what I found out was that my problem was the problem of many women. And the good news is that this is no longer a problem just for women, that this is a problem for companies, for organizations, and for governments. And so the EU, for example, is scoring member states on how well they're doing on their diversity and inclusion initiatives. It's no longer acceptable for a company to not have diverse engineering teams. And so what we've tried to build out now are these relationships with companies like Bumble, who, so to use this as an example, Bumble, is a very innovative, woman-founded, women-led company. And when they took a look at their engineering teams, they saw that they could be doing better, just as so many other companies out there. And so unique about Bumble was that they decided to put their money where their mouth is and build a junior training program that was specifically for women, trans, and non-binary people. And so they partnered with CodeUp to design this program, in which CodeUp is a service provider, and we're recruiting their future junior engineers, and we train them and then help Bumble integrate them into the engineering teams. So that's one way that we're working with companies. Another way, for example, is, well, we're familiar with the United Nations, and part of FAO is the EU FMD. And we know that getting women into tech is an SDG. Well, if people start looking internally, they need to walk the talk. And so they have partnered with CodeUp to offer paid training opportunities for our graduates. So there's a lot of different ways that we're working with different stakeholders. And I think that's exactly what needs to happen to support Women Plus at different points of the journey.
Okay, so I mean, this seems to be it's like a bold way to address the equity issue, isn't it? I mean, just absolutely leveling up the playing field. I mean, what Bumble have done is, I mean, that's a textbook case, isn't it? As you say, they put the money where their mouth is. I was blown away by the list of benefits, including the kind of training benefits, health perks, salary, removing every possible obstacle, that we know is out there. So what we've got then, we've got an example of a model that works, at least in terms of bridging the equity gap. We've got certainly, okay, companies know it's not acceptable. I think they also have known for many years that the bottom line is affected by a lack of diversity as well. Companies perform better when they're inclusive. It's an SDG. So that kind of top level policy making part has changed. But in the middle, you're talking about changing culture. You mentioned we help Women Plus integrate into teams, and this is the the gray area for me. How do you actually change a culture? How do you actually, when you're talking about diversity, okay, but inclusion and integration, that must be where the tricky bit is, surely.
Yes and no, right?
No.
So I think changing culture needs to happen at the top level, in the sense that we need different people creating culture, creating initiatives, creating policies that reflect diverse needs. And so the assumption when we created CodeUp and that we were supporting folks who have traditionally been marginalized to tech, when we would give them a platform by which they could have access to tech, that it would inherently transform it. Because all of a sudden you have people with different backgrounds coming up with solutions that reflect the needs of their own community, right? There's always that sort of inherent bias when we're coming up with policies, procedures that we sort of know what works for us. And there's this bias to think about your needs first. And so we've seen, certainly like with our students, when they're developing their projects, their full stack apps, or their portfolio projects for product management, their features, new products, it tends to reflect the needs of their own community. And so when we bring those traditions, when we bring those values into the workspace, I think it will happen naturally. So we need the people in, but we also need the people at the top deciding to create this platform, connecting this bridge in which, it is a value to them to diversify their tech teams.
Right. Okay. It sounds like a no-brainer. But again, I'm sure you meet an awful lot of resistance, and an awful lot of that sounds like a good idea in theory, and a lot of heel dragging. And this is what is honestly, genuinely and authentically impressed me about CodeUp is you're just not about to wait, because when you and I talked in Barcelona, I remember you saying very clearly that the reason you were making such a bold move, as I would call it, of saying this is school for Women Plus only, is because bold solutions are needed, because The other ways of addressing the gender imbalance or gender disparity and the lack of inclusion of Women Plus as a whole, it's clearly not working.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing. So I wanted to ask you about the visibility issue here, because in terms of women, you've got statistics everywhere. You know, how many women felt encouraged to pursue a career in tech? How many women continued from a degree in computer science into studying?
It's
it's all dismal. But the thing that I noticed when researching this was, in terms of trans and non-binary statistics, almost
there's not a lot of statistics out there.
There's not at all. Yeah. So on that side of things, is there anything in motion to sort of increase the visibility of this issue?
100%. Yeah.
Move the conversation, and how is it you're doing that?
Yeah, I went to a conference, and one of the speakers said, "You measure what you treasure," right? And there's important organizations that want to advocate for different groups that have been marginalized, but there are no statistics to back what they're doing. And so their work is actually collecting data to give folks that visibility and to show that, hey, there's an issue here. So not just related to trans folks, but also in general, statistics tend to be around tech, around boot camp, about even women leaders. It's very US centric, and CodeUp is building an international brand, and we're trying to see how what's happening in Pan Africa, what's happening in Latin America for trans folks there, because it's quite diverse. And so we're certainly, CodeUp is a social venture, which means that we have impact indicators in our shareholders agreement. And so we are building our own databases to look into this. You can find some statistics out there. Stack Overflow does every year this big developer survey that is worldwide, and they have some statistics there, but it's part of the issue 100%.
I mean, I hesitate to use the word, but this is a movement. I mean, this is it is. I mean, I think so too. I mean, it's one of the words I choose carefully, because it's one of these words that's in danger of getting diluted, like the word awesome has been.
Yeah, as a Californian,
yeah. I mean, it used to be a biblical term, and now you can use it to describe a great sandwich. I mean, it's really lost its meaning. So, but this is a movement. I mean, it's so much broader. You're involved at every stage. You're kind of gnawing away at all the pockets of resistance, wherever you can make a difference. I wonder how that comes across to others. So zooming out from, say, the echo chamber of all the people around you that agree and are aligned with the mission, all the companies that are coming to you and saying, we are on board, we're on side, let's collaborate.
Yeah.
Generally in the tech industry, what's the reaction? Is it lukewarm? Is it curious? Is it wait and see? Is there hostility?
Yeah. Explicitly, I haven't experienced much hostility. I'd say that the overwhelming response has been positive, but responding is not acting. No. And the reality is few are willing to act. And the thing is if you take a couple steps back and you do the math, if you think about what you're paying recruiters to go find new tech talent, or if you're thinking about the overturn that you have within your company because they're not diverse engineers, I mean, do the math, and a solution like Bumble Tech Academy program is a no-brainer. But it just takes some rewiring and innovating, and I think that's what Bumble did so fantastically. Is that, I mean, this was a program that was being pushed by their innovations team. So it wasn't diversity and inclusion team, it wasn't the engineering team, it was the innovation team.
That's interesting. That's really interesting.
It may not always be like that. It might not always be like that. In the case of Bumble, it was the innovation team. And so I think that this is also a radical way of looking at work to future, a different model to this traditional recruitment model, recruiting people from college. We've had companies say, hi, if I'm trying to attract the best young talent, how about send them to Barcelona for an 11-week boot camp for like women that haven't been encouraged to pursue computer science, but who are interested in doing it. Send them to Barcelona, train them, and then bring them back. I mean, I think that's a a totally sexy offer and says a lot about the company and what they're willing to do for diversity inclusion.
100%. And you've already proved or in the process of proving that it works, and collecting all the data at the side and making noise through marketing and PR. And, you know, I mean, it's well in the way to being a, you know, what Bumble Tech Academy is easily transferable.
Yeah,
you know
100%.
so
You
that's
know,
great.
one of the concerns was, you know, there's this myth of the talent pipeline. And in fact, I was asked this when I was pitching CodeUp to investors. And I said, did you ever think that maybe there's not a lot of women in tech because they're not interested in being in tech? I said, okay, fair question. I have thought about it, and I don't think that's the case. Why would women not want access to something super interesting intellectually, something that comes with a lot of privilege and flexibility? I think the point is that women haven't been encouraged traditionally to pursue this, and they don't even know that this is an option at this point. I think a lot of nonprofit organizations, as well as traditional schools, are doing work on this to encourage young girls. But the fact of the matter is that there's a big pool of talent that were probably meant to be software engineers when they were younger, but they were never given the chance. And when we tap into that talent and they come to our boot camp and you just see them come alive, and you know, they feel like they have this match, it's really powerful. And so just a quick anecdote, you know, when we launched Bumble Tech Academy, basically we had an enrollment period of 2 weeks. So we put the offer out there and we said, all right, let's see who wants to apply. And I already knew that many people would apply, but not everyone was convinced that would be the case. And they said 2 weeks is not a lot of time to attract talent. We had an over 5,000% increase in folks applying to our programs. And there's also this assumption that people going to boot camps don't have any educational background in STEM. And that was also not the case. I mean, we had people who certainly had high school degrees, but also had MDs, you know, people that were looking to change careers, people that, you know, were physicists back in college, then had children and, you know, haven't been working for 10 years and want to get back into industry. So it was really diverse, and it was hard to select the final 8 students that did Bumble Tech Academy.
Yeah, I would not have liked to have been responsible for that decision. It's very difficult. Yeah. But I think it's super interesting. I mean, I want to pick up on something there because I've been thinking about this as well. But I could imagine that people might be able to say with confidence that many women are not interested in tech because what they're doing is they're taking the superficial, symptomatic end of things and saying, have you ever seen yourself in a tech career? No. Oh, well, and conflating that with a lack of interest. But it's exactly as you say, never having been encouraged, never having seen people that look like me or I can relate to in tech. So you've got that whole side of things to deal with about obviously not just waiting for people that come to you, but how do you meet people where they are and provide that spark or plant that seed. So at that end of things, how is it you're doing it? I mean, are you actually hosting, say, community events, open doors? How are you wording things in the way that you encourage people to apply? How do you actually get people to think, maybe I might try this?
Yeah, that's a lot of our work. And so, I mean, at CodeOp, we say we're not just a school, we're also a community, and we're not saying that in vain. Much of our work is invested in doing events, both remote and in person, free events, so that women can learn, that trans and non-binary folks know that, hey, there's a place where you can study and not have to, you know, worry about being bullied, that they have a safe place. So we're doing these events, and that's a big part of our impact strategy. It's an impact indicator for us, in fact. And then also, so, you know, we have coding workshops. People can start playing around with code. A lot of the messaging that we're doing is anecdotal. So meet folks that have done it, as well as, you know, try it, learn. This is not rocket science. No, everyone can do this. And that's very powerful. We've been doing from the very start of CodeUp an event, a quarterly event called Women Plus who have transitioned into tech. And it's always a really powerful, a powerful workshop where they're hearing from different folks and they're starting to play with code. and you see these lights turn on, and people are moved by hearing the stories because they thought they were alone. And then all of a sudden it sort of normalized, well, like, hey, there's a lot of folks who have been where I'm at right now, and look where they are 2 years down the line. So this is an important piece of the work, as well as, we want when our students go to work in tech, we want to make sure that they meet a good team and that they stay working in tech, that they're supported. And so there's sort of this ongoing support that needs to continue, because they'll have different issues that come up. So this is also part of our work.
So in terms of those stages of the journey, so I mean, this is how you are going into the community and encouraging and making sure the door is open, making sure that the people, very important, I think, can visualize themselves doing it,
Exactly.
see other people they relate to. I noticed on your website you did the before, what I did before. I was a medical writer or whatever. Now I'm doing this. And it's amazing, because it is a different world. It really is.
Totally.
But to make it seem like, as you say, this is not as steep a transition as you think,
Totally.
and we're here to support you. So then when the learners come into CodeUp, I mean, obviously the support is ongoing, but how is it that you're there for them? How is it that you actually, what are the concrete actions you take to create a safe space, to show support for their journey, and how does that manifest itself in the learning as well?
So it's a tough learning journey, right? They have a lot to cover in a short amount of time, and there's a lot of negative, deeply ingrained sort of negative self-narratives on loop. So we're fully aware of that, and we've seen this so many times, and we actually know, like, based on the flow of the boot camp and how, at what week things start ramping up, and by week 5, 6, folks are just overwhelmed, inundated with information, and there's crying that happens, there's projection that happens. So we, I think, from the very start, try to humanize the learning journey. We go into this knowing that learning is inherently an intimate experience wrapped up in these self-narratives, in our histories, and it comes up when you're learning in a difficult learning space. So we go into that, we try to forewarn them from day one that this is going to happen, and it's okay when it happens. We have one of the things that enables us to manage this well, and by manage it well, mean that we have different types of supporters for the students that are not just the lead instructors. Maybe we have coding mentors, we have teachers' assistants who are coming from different backgrounds, different journeys into tech, so they can connect with students differently. We have people coming in from the outside to support students. I'm talking with students. And so the way that we manage all of this in giving different lines of support is by maintaining a student to teacher ratio of 5 to 1. Wow. So our class sizes are never more than 15 students. And this, I think, really pays off in terms of just how relational the experience is throughout the 11 weeks or the 6 months. So that's happening. Certainly, we've incorporated it into the curriculum. So, for example, we are addressing things that are uniquely experienced by not just women per se, but folks who are changing industry and function. It takes a lot of courage to do that. So I'd say, from the environment to the relationships, the lines of support to the actual curriculum, we're continuing to iterate on what will fully support our students.
Yeah, it's a major part of it, isn't it? I mean, because of your unique environment, I mean, the idea of psychological safety is, without this and without the attention to well-being, learning can't take place anyway. So it's interesting to hear about that. So, I mean, it seems like there is that kind of real support from day one moving through. And I wondered about when they leave CodeUp, because, I mean, this is the other thing is, it is quite a protected environment, CodeUp. It is quite, there's that support, especially the ratio you're talking about as well, the attention, and must be trialing to make that final jump into employment. So how is it that you are there for your learners in that stage?
Yeah. Yeah, well, so I just want to take a step back and say, so all of our students need to identify as women, trans, or non-binary. The larger CodeUp community of administrators, of educators, don't have to identify as such. So it's diverse on our team in terms of gender.
Okay.
And we think because, I mean, we've seen other all-women tech schools just have women instructors, just have women staff. And in my opinion, we have a lot of men backing what we're doing. And I think that's great. And we need to encourage
Yeah.
that, as well as encourage our students to have healthy relationships with men, because in the end, when they work in industry, they're going to be working with men. So we're trying to facilitate that from the very start. No? Once they graduate from the program, absolutely. I mean, it's like you've just come out of a washing machine and you're like, where is the sky? Where is the ground? Who am I? Because I just had to like lose myself to get through this 11 weeks and stay focused, right? So we give like a post-course curriculum that gives them structure for the following weeks, so they can maintain that structure that is like safe to them. But also a key thing is that we have a career coach who's available to our alumni after the program. So for us, our job isn't done until they reach their career goal, whether that's getting promoted or finding their first job in tech. So we have open office hours for our alumni to continually check in with the career coach. And I know students have definitely utilized that as they're getting ready to transition.
Yeah, I'm sure that would be really reassuring to a lot of people coming into to CodeUp. And I wonder then so it's not really linear though, isn't it? I mean, these things are usually cyclical. So what things are in place, for example, to bring in graduates, if you want to use that word, who have been out and actually, I mean, I know CodeUp hasn't been operating for so many years. It's not like there's thousands of people out there to come back in, but as these women plus are entering employment and getting a year or two of experience, are they invited back into CodeUp to mentor or to be around for the learners who are going through it?
100%, and in many different ways. So one of the things I mentioned is we have like outside event speakers come in to support students, to let them know what the ecosystem is like once they start working at a tech company, what are the different roles, responsibilities. So we're always tapping into our alumni network, and typically they're very happy to support us because it was such a game changer for them. We also have been known to sucker some of our alumni to work with us, and that's been fantastic for personal reasons, as well as there's no question that having someone who's graduated from the program, who's been through it, help you debug. They can really understand the student on a lot of different levels. And also I think having a profile like that is very much complementary to a lead instructor who maybe came from a computer science background. They have a different way of explaining and breaking down a problem than someone who just recently graduated from a boot camp. So we always try to make sure that we have that sort of complementary relationship in the group. But it's been really exciting to see our alumni, because at this point we have some of our first graduates now entering like mid-level roles.
Yeah, right.
So it's exciting. It's exciting.
So this is the culture changing from within already. It's beginning to bear fruit. And I mean, what stands out to you, Katrina? I mean, if you're thinking back about, I mean, this is a hugely emotional movement that you're involved in. This isn't just sit down and learn and production line. I mean, this is very human. This is very involved. What stands out to you when you think back on that, the moments where it could be a phrase, it could be something someone said, could be a moment, could be just a moment of realization where you were like, this is the right path, we're doing something important here. What stands out to you?
Yeah, so it's very powerful work, and it's good that it's powerful work because it's exhausting work. As someone who doesn't have a co-founder, as someone who's gone the VC route, it's a lot of intense work, and it's not just like a SaaS company where we're not right next to our customers. No, our customers are our students, and we're right next to them, sharing classroom space with them. So we absorb a lot of the emotional roller coaster of going through a boot camp on top of the stresses of, trying to make a startup work. What makes it all worth it is that relationship piece, and that it's a transformative experience for students. It's very emotional. I mean, I'd say there is not a boot camp that has graduated and staff is not crying. That's
Yeah.
that's how personal it is, and you see the fruit of your work. And because it's an intense learning experience, I mean, you're in education, you understand it's easy to, when you start feeling insecure, when the material is really difficult to understand, it's easy to get angry. It's easy to put it on the instructor, to put it on the school. But then at the end, you see everything paid off. You don't even recognize yourself, and you feel like immense gratitude. And so, it's never, I also have an aversion to hyperbole. And part of the power of being in the educational space is that it is transformative. So that continues to fuel us. And if there's any like one story, or a visual really, this was, I think, our second cohort at CodeUp. And one of our students, it was our first mom that we had in the program, a mom of 2 kids. And her son was ill. But this was one of the cases that this student should have been a software engineer from the very start. Right. So she had never touched code prior to joining CodeUp. Once she joined CodeUp, she was a shooting star and just like gobbled up the information and fell in love with it. And she's that mid-level now. So I just have this visual of walking into the classroom, and her son's head was on her lap, and she was, caressing him in the forehead while she's coding. And it was just a really intense experience. I mean, it's also, we can say it's problematic that there's not, more options for daycare for parents. That's something in it of itself, but it was powerful to see just this like nurturing warrior, working at the boot camp while also so lovingly caring for her child.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's just incredible. And I'm sure that won't be the last example of this that you see. I mean, it's there must be a lot of women plus returning from breaks, career breaks, things like that, complex family issues, all the stories that individuals bring with them into the environment. So yeah, as you say, it's exhausting but powerful. I mean,
100%. So many different cases. Absolutely. I mean, we've had, just another anecdote. We've had certainly more than one student who, in doing this boot camp, was basically an out of a violent, abusive relationship, and getting into tech where they could become economically independent meant, that they could get out of this relationship. And we see that happen. And I mean, that's the kind of intensity that we're dealing with.
Yeah. I mean, but how then, this question has just occurred to me. I mean, when you're dealing with that level of intensity, and you're absolutely going to feel this huge level of responsibility that you absolutely can't falter.
Yeah.
Because this is so critical. You falter, there is a misstep, and you lose someone that who knows what is the next step in their story, because this didn't pan out for them. How do you protect your own well-being through all this?
Well, I have a couple comments. First, I never take for granted the fact that, doing a boot camp is expensive. And certainly we try to find ways where, companies sponsor our students. We find money from others. CodeUp has its own scholarship program in which we're putting our revenue into subsidizing the education of our students. So there's a lot of mechanisms like that, but in the end, it's expensive, and people are taking a real risk here to do this. And so I don't take that for granted. So I always take it very seriously. And it's immense pressure, obviously, when a student is going through our program. Luckily, I mean, we've been able to discern a pattern, and that is that, for the majority of cases, this works out to be a really positive experience and a life changer for them. So that's on our side, but I don't take it for granted. Aside from that, certainly I was a social worker before getting into tech. For 5 years, I was working as a social worker. So there's been some training there. But I think the reality is that like lives are very messy and complicated, you know, and it's bound to show up in intense learning spaces. And so we welcome it and we expect it, in fact.
I think what people don't always understand, unless they're in a situation like yours as well, is the amount of energy that you can receive from doing this work. You know, it's not you know, of course it's exhausting, it's tiring, but it's not a drain as such. You know, it is a fountain, isn't it? When you see these moments, you might arrive one day feeling tired and not well rested and leave upbeat and full of energy because of the experiences you've had. I don't think that you have to kind of be in a situation like that to really understand it. I think, you know, what's next then? That's my kind of the final thing I wanted to ask you, because it seems like it's unstoppable. Latin America, you've mentioned South America. Anywhere in particular? And what's the broader vision? You know, what where else would you like to branch out to? Is there any areas that you'd like to shore up in supporting learners through the journey? I mean, what's the plan?
So the vision from CodeUp from the very start has been international, and that's really based in a couple facts. First, the problem that we're trying to solve is an international problem. There's not, you know, one country or region that doesn't. It's a worldwide phenomenon, this fact. And so we see that as an opportunity to do our work around the world. So we're working on that. Obviously, I mentioned we're in Malaysia already, and we're going to Latin America. The focus is Brazil at this point. Certainly, we have interest in other countries, but we're starting first in Brazil. And luckily, I mean, as I mentioned, we are venture backed, and so we have the support of some really great people that can help us achieve that mission. And so in the next years, we're looking to branch out to 5 different places around the world to bring our courses there. So there is this branching out geographically, but also where we think, you know, really addressing this structurally, we need the support of governments and companies like Bumble, like the government of Catalonia. We need more people doing things like that, because this really gets those barriers down economically for folks. So we're looking on working on that.
Okay, so it's nonstop, basically. Yeah. And quickly as well. I mean, that seems very that's a fast internationalization process. Yeah. Okay, I didn't need to remind you of that. Incredibly impressive, it really is.
Thank you.
Of course, driven by a pressing need, as you say, and it seems to be not just international, but across all levels of the industry as well. Small, medium enterprises, big corporate, it's the same problem everywhere. So
totally, exactly. Yeah, in that way, it's a quite unique problem, you know, because it's impacting many different people on different levels. No, this is in the end very much a public problem.
Yeah, absolutely. Just as a sort of final aside, I came across you guys taught me a word recently in one of your job adverts, and I tried to use it as a hashtag on a LinkedIn post today, and LinkedIn wouldn't let me. So I'm hoping you can shed some light on what the word dickheadery means to you.
Dickheadery, yeah. I wish our head of brand and content was here, Jiro, who's she's an incredible person, very clever with words. And so dickheadery is a sort of more polite way of saying to just not be an asshole, you know, and we're talking about toxic culture. We're talking about just being unkind to others. We have a 0 tolerance policy to unkindness or dickheadery.
Yeah. Well, amen to that. And thank you for teaching me a new word as well, added to the vocabulary. Katrina, thank you so much for making the time. Amazing to hear what you're doing. I can't wait to see what comes next. I feel like every time I'm going to check in on CodeUp, there's going to be something new unfolding.
Thanks very much, Mark. It's been a pleasure.
Okay. Just to check, the website it's CodeUp.tech.
Correct.
Okay, that's great. Okay. Thank you very much, and I hope to speak to you again soon.
Thanks, Mark. Ciao.
Take care.